Let's quickly look at the concept of the mole in stoichiometry under chemistry. So what do we mean when we say a mole? What is a mole? So a mole is just an amount of substance that contains 6.022 times 10 to the power 23 elements. These elements can be atoms, molecules, or even particles. So if we really want to understand what a mole is, the best example that we can use is a dozen. What is a dozen? We understand a dozen to be 12 numbers of anything. For example, we can say a dozen of eggs, and we understand a dozen of eggs to be 12 eggs. If we say 2 dozen of eggs, we understand that to be 24 eggs. So, like a dozen, a mole is just a word that we use to describe a number of given elements, and the number that we're describing in this context is 6.022 times 10 to the power 23, which is a very large number. So instead of saying this number, we just say a mole. So in simpler terms, what we're trying to say is that a mole, one mole, is equal to 6.022 times 10 to the power 23. Okay. And let's say, for example, we said 1 mole of carbon. This would mean that we are talking about 6.022 times 10 to the power 23 atoms of carbon. Maybe if we said 2 moles of carbon, means that we're talking about 2 times 6.022 times 10 atoms of carbon. And it's not just about elements. We can also talk about molecules, for example, where we can look at maybe, let's say, CO2. Okay. If we say we have 1 mole of CO2, means that we're talking about 6.022 times 10 about 23 molecules of CO2. So that's the basic definition of a mole. So another thing that you need to know about moles is how they relate to okay, let me just remove this part. What you need to know about moles again is how they relate to grams. Let's consider the element nitrogen. We know that nitrogen has an atomic number of 7 and a mass number of 14. Where we can express the mass number 14 in atomic mass unit, or we can say that 14 can also be expressed as grams per mole. So now let's look at this. What does this mean? It means that in 14 grams of nitrogen, 14 grams of nitrogen, let's just say 14 grams of nitrogen is equal to 1 mole of nitrogen. So we are simply saying 1 mole of nitrogen weighs 14 grams. Okay? Then again, this means that 2 moles of nitrogen weigh 28 grams. So you need to know this relation. Again, if we say 1 mole of nitrogen is equal to 14 grams of nitrogen. Again, we know that 1 mole of nitrogen is equal to 6.022 times 10 to the power 23 atoms. So you see, are you seeing the relation that we are building between the number of moles, the weight, and the number of atoms? How these things are relating. So in the next videos that we are going to consider, we're going to see how we can move from the number of moles to the grams, which is the molar mass, again to the number of atoms in a given element, which we are calling the Ava. We've even forgotten the spelling for this, which we are calling the Avogadro's number. Okay, which is just equal to 6.022 times 10 power 23 atoms. So we're going to see how we can relate these and convert between these three different things. So in the next video, we're going to consider those things. For now, let's end the introduction part here.